Day on the green. Tay build a custom intake, and we are live. Thank you guys for showing up. Hopefully, when you show up, we have people here already, and we're already conversing. So you're a BK Nissan, you did a custom intake manifold. That's awesome. If there's not something made for it, then make it yourself. That's always the way to go. So today, today was already fairly cool. I got an invitation from some friends of mine, Bernie and Jimmy, guys that I met way back in the day out at the very first Silver State, and we met, immediately fell in love. Both of them have had 240Zs, which are awesome, and obviously I like those. And we got to talking, and we've been doing stuff. As it turned out, we became best friends and did the Silver State thing for like 12 years in a row. So very, very cool stuff. But today I got an invitation to go, and I haven't seen either one of them for quite a while. And I got to, because we used to go out to the Silver State and stay at Jimmy's place, and Bernie would fly out there. It was awesome. But I haven't seen either one of them for a long time. I got an invitation to go out to the Reno air races. So I got in my truck early this morning and drove out to Reno. And it was really cool because the first time I've ever been to the Reno air races. I mean, I've seen videos of them, that kind of stuff. And Bernie and Jimmy have been there a few times, but I had never been there. So a guy drove out and said, yeah, I will definitely come. I'll drive out there and meet you guys. So I drove out there and got to see some very cool stuff. When I got there, I immediately asked Bernie, okay, where's the line so I can get a ride in an SR71? Because I just want to get in that line right away and get that over with. But he said that apparently there's no line for you to actually get a ride in an SR71, which would have been very, very cool. But the awesome thing is, in fact, they didn't even have an SR71 there, but they did have lots and lots of cool planes there. All the P51s you could possibly want, and they're racing them and going very fast. Lots of jets, Corsairs, just everything that you would want to see there. Everybody liked taking them out there and going fast in them, and and you get to walk around and look at all the cool stuff. Plus, they had good corn dogs and pizza and all kinds of good stuff. So all the things that I want. Plus, I got to see good friends, which is really the reason that I went there. The Reno air races and seeing all the cool planes and all that stuff, because we got to talk about all that stuff, which was cool. That really just kind of icing on the cake. But just so my point is, even though it was fairly far away and it took a long time to go there and come back, make the effort. Go and see your buddies. Go help them if they want. If they need help with getting their car done or their house painted or whatever it is they're doing, make sure to take the time. Go see them, go see friends, go help them, go get all that stuff done, because that's very, very important. Really, the car community is really cool, and it's all cool, obviously. And while I was going there, I'm talking to the guys from the car farm and talking to the guys down south, down by West Tech, and all of that. The cool thing is, it is cool getting to modify your car and go fast and do all that stuff. But the even cooler thing are the people that you meet during all this stuff and the friends that you make. And that's really kind of what it's all about. So make sure that you go do that. And then I was obviously as big a hurry as I was to go out and, meet my friends and go do cool stuff. I'm in as big a hurry to get back and see my family. So it's kind of tough wanting to do all that, and get it done. I did get a bunch of stuff done on car stuff today, or not today. Yesterday, I was going to do, I had to leave early this morning, obviously, to go out and go to the air races, which was very cool. So I didn't get to do a live feed in the morning. I probably will try to do that more often, and just to make sure that I'm doing my stuff and talking to the guys at the car farm about the Omni and what's happening with that. And then even more weird ideas about four-wheel drive ones and rear-wheel drive ones, just all kinds of nonsense that car guys get together and talk about. So that's awesome. And then talking to the guys down south, guys that I've met and worked with and done stuff down there. All the cool stuff. Got the Dodge heads, both of the 2.2 heads, both the Bathtub head and the swirl head, cleaned and ready to, when I head down to West Tech, do the dyno testing on. Got the L28 ET, the turbo Nissan motor, Datsun 280Z ZX turbo motor. Got it rolling around. Also picked up the 350 Pontiac and the Turbo 400 Trans and a bunch of other stuff that are going that went along or we're going to go along with the GTO build that's happening, and the 400 is in there, and that I ran on the dyno is in there. That car is running. They're redoing the interior and all kinds of stuff. It's already been painted. It's very, very cool. Lots of that stuff will be for sale. So if anybody is looking for a 4-speed M20 trans and the shifter and all that assembly, basically, I think it's kind of everything that's needed to convert an automatic into a manual trans, or just another manual trans. If you need a manual trans and the car was already equipped originally with a manual trans, that stuff is all there because that car is staying as an automatic. It's not being converted over. So that stuff is all being for sale. I'm trying to sell it for the lady that had all this stuff. Not that she's not young, she is a young lady. All of that stuff. So, but I did pick up the 350 and I have that in my storage. I'll probably be taking that down to West Tech. We'll run it on the dyno just to see what it is. As it turns out, I looked up the numbers on it, and it is the block is a 69. So hopefully that's what the rest of the stuff is. I want to see. I took the specs on the head. I have not looked up the head yet. The head is let's see. I think it had a 4 and a 7 on it. Yeah, it has a 4 and a 7 on it. Let's see. Also has a 3 and a 6. I'm thinking it's as a 69, it's probably a low compression head. I'm thinking, unless they put something else on it. It does have the Edelbrock intake manifold on. It's got a 4-barrel intake manifold on it, but that was obviously installed on there. So we'll see. Hopefully, even if it is a low compression 350, and maybe it was originally even a low compression 2-barrel 350, that doesn't mean it can't be made into something else. It's very, very, very cool. And the thing that I like is that of the Pontiac motors, the 350 gets, along with the 326 and some of those, gets like the least amount of love. Because if you're a Pontiac guy, the Pontiac guys all want to know, they all want to talk 400. Some of them 389. 450 or 455 would be another really popular one, along with the 400. The gentleman that I picked up the motor from says he has a Super Duty 421, which I might be able to run on the dyno, which would be very, very cool, because that is a neat motor. And he also has a ready to go, basically pan to air cleaner 348 W series tri-power motor. So I've never run one of those, so that also would be cool. So I'm hoping that all of that stuff transpires and we're able to run that, because I think that motor is all together and kind of ready to go. So that would be very, very cool. The Omni is getting done. After the discussion today, we were talking about going off on tangents, talking about things, but basically the Omni is getting redone. And so I'm hoping I'm going to find out when that might all be done, when it'll be repainted and make the changes that we need, so I can get it back out here and then take it to West Tech, run it on the chassis dyno, make sure it's working right, and then go through the process of getting it smogged and registered and all that. So that would be awesome. I'm very excited about driving that around and going through the process of getting it, certified and registered and insured and all that stuff. That would be good. And then be able to drive it around. And hopefully that will happen. It probably will go through the winter, I think, because I'm not that concerned about driving it around, obviously, while it's raining. Not that it would melt or that it's made of sugar, but it'll be more of a springtime and summertime kind of car. Not that we have really bad winters here in California. It gets cold, but not snow. And there's obviously they're not salting the roads or doing anything weird like that. So that would be cool. And then when I go down to West Tech this time, I'm going to put together the early 84 2.2. And I don't think the gentleman, Derek, that works for the machine shop, I thought that we had talked about upgrading the head studs up or the size of the head bolts, because that one has 10 millimeter. I think the later ones have 11 millimeter. So I thought we talked about doing an upgrade, drilling and tapping those. He couldn't remember. I honestly couldn't remember. I thought that we did, and he thought that we did maybe, and we didn't know if that got done. I'm now kind of hoping that it didn't get done, because what I want to do is on the 84, we can do lots and lots of testing on it. And I kind of want to see, because everyone says, oh, no, you can't use those because, you know, it doesn't have strong enough head bolts or head studs or whatever. I kind of want to see what that is. What is the reality about that? Like, how much will they take? We know that they'll take factory boost levels because lots and lots and lots of them have been run like that. How much more they'll take, and is the head bolt situation really a problem? Is that a myth? And if it is a problem, at what point is it a problem? Is it a problem at, you know, the factory boost is going to be 7 pounds for these early, like, non-intercooled stuff. And then when they went to the T2 stuff, they were all the bigger head studs or head bolts. And any other kind of performance variant had a different head bolt in it. So what I want to see is it a problem? And if it is a problem, a sealing problem, where is that? Is that at 10 pounds? Is it 20 pounds? 30? What is it? What power level? Where does that become a problem? So I think that in a way that will be even more interesting, because I have a 2.5 that's going together that we're going to do a bunch of stuff with, and that one will have ARP head studs and will be machined to accept the kinetic gaskets and stuff. So we'll know going in on that one that the clamping and head gasket and head stud thing will not be an issue. So if we need to, and we need to go up and boost more and do testing at higher power levels with a 2.5, we'll be able to do that. So it would be nice to have a 2.2, and I'll have a 2.2 with the bigger head bolts in the car. So we'll be able to do chassis dyno testing with that. So again, I think we got all of our bases covered, which will be really, really cool. We are going to do a poll tonight. So let's see, 706. So I was about to ask what happened to the visor ported head. I don't know yet. I haven't gotten it back. We will be doing ported heads. The guys from the Car Farm are sending ported versions of both the G head or the bathtub head and the swirl head, and with bigger valves. And so we'll be testing both of those. I'm curious to see. I saw some flow numbers from the stuff that they had done, that Brian had done, and they were pretty impressive numbers. So it'll be interesting to see how when we flow test all of these back to back, the stock ones and then the ported ones, what they do on the flow bench, and then also what they do once we put them on a car or on an engine on the dyno, and then what they do maybe at different boost levels. So what happens, like we run them the stock head at 7 pounds and we run a ported head at 7 pounds, what happens with a stock cam and that kind of stuff, and then what at 10 pounds and then 20 pounds, or, you know, some sort of higher power level, does the head become, you know, progressively better? And then also, does the stock, what I'm wondering is, and when we'll have to structure the test for this, I'm wondering if, like we see with some of the LS stuff, if you, for instance, if you step up from a stock LS3 head to a ported LS3 head, you don't really get very much if you have a stock camshaft in there, because the rest of the motor can't take advantage of the extra head flow. Do we see a situation like that with the 2.2? The head flow is not, like, relatively speaking, not LS3 level. It would be maybe more sub 706 head level in LS3 in LS speak. So I think that we'd see more of a gain from porting the 2.2 head. But I want to see. if we then put some sort of performance, either a reground or a billet camshaft in there, will we then get even more gain from the head? I suspect that we will, but that'll all be interesting testing. Okay, so you should have brought the motor for the Omni home to play with. Not the stock one. I don't need that, because I can get. We're actually going to do. That was actually going to be part of the program when I was there, but we didn't because of what happened with the truck and stuff. We wanted to put together 2 other short blocks, a turbo version and an NA version. So we wanted to basically change the compression and then see what happens when we ran the same heads, cam, and intake on both of those to find out what the effect static compression has, again, NA and boosted. And also kind of to see with obviously with ring gap, How strong are the NA pistons? Can we, if we go with higher compression, which we assume going in is going to make more power, it's going to. Higher compression will make more power than the lower compression on either combination, NA or boosted. But the question is, how much strength do they have? Like we take an NA short block, same thing with the L28. If you take the NA version of the L28 and not the turbo version with higher compression, are the pistons strong enough to withstand, obviously if we take ring gap out of the equation, are those pistons strong enough to withstand, the rigors of boost? Can you run 7 pounds? Can you run 10? Can you run 15? Can you run as much on the NA version as you can on the turbo version without damaging the piston? So that would be the second question. The power question, I think, is going to kind of be self-explanatory. It's definitely going to make more power with higher compression. But even if you can do that, and we see the same thing in the 3800 stuff. Guys run the 3800 Series 2 stuff, or the Series 3 stuff. If you run the NA version, it has more static compression. But are those factory pistons as strong as the supercharged pistons in that case? And then are they as strong on the turbo 2.2 or 2.5? And are they as strong? Well, there's no NA. Yeah, there is. And the same thing on the L28. Will all of the NA things, take the kind of abuse that we put into it when we do a turbo, assuming that we have the right air, fuel, and timing? That's a big thing on a lot of these applications, especially the 2.2 and 2.5 stuff and the L28 stuff. I think getting the 3800 stuff, getting that tuned and getting it right, I think is less of a problem. Those kind of came later, and so we had a little bit more sophisticated stuff on the management system, and we ran a Holly on it, and we were able to do that. So I kind of would like to see what effect the compression has, and then whether or not those things are all strong enough. So let's see. Dodge. Are the NA pistons in the 2.2 liter Dodge strong enough? Are the NA pistons in the 2.2 liter Dodge strong enough to take 20 pounds of boost? Let's see what people think. And I know we're talking boost, and we shouldn't be. We should be talking power, but we're not. We're talking about boost today. What is the design of the two pistons? You really need to kind of look at them, side by side to see. Why does it keep changing? Is it true or a myth about the 20% loss? That's the other thing I forgot we needed to talk about, because I put that in the description for the in the thumbnail. Which is one of my favorite photos is the guys, Eugene and Steve, I think, working on what we were doing is, and this is an interesting deal that we did. So I bought way back, I was doing stuff for Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forwards. I bought this was a 90, I think this is a 98 Mustang. First thing I was hoping is a different color red. This was burgundy. I asked the guy 5 times. It's not the burgundy color, right? It's red. He said, oh, yeah, it's definitely red. And then I drove out the 100 miles or whatever to go get it, and it was this color. I'm like, I'm going to get it anyway. He said the rear end makes noise. I'm like, yeah, it's got 1 million miles on it. That's okay. We can probably fix that. So this was a 4.6 2-valve 5-speed GT non-PI motor. I thought, okay, well, our goal for this is to make 300 horsepower at the tire with non-PI stuff, without resorting to PI stuff. With PI stuff, that's not hard. With non-PI stuff, it's a lot harder. We ended up doing yada, yada, yada. Ooh. Thank you. Cheers.
You're red. It's hot up here.
It is on. Turn that. No, just turn that switch on. Then I can turn the fan on. Dang. I'm gonna turn this off. Thank you, love. I love you, wife, Lisa. So after we set the goal of getting 300 horsepower, we were going to do. That's probably going to make some noise in the fan. I think it's turned up all the way. There we go. Turn it down a little bit. After deciding that and really achieving that goal, one of the things I did, or in order to achieve that goal, is because the motor was tired, I thought, well, let's run it on the chassis dyno because we're going to be doing stuff on the chassis dyno. And I think the guys from at the time, Coast High Performance, said, hey, we will give you a short block, one that's just rebuilt and kind of ready to go, and it has forged pistons in it. And we'll give you that short block. And if you put it in and do stories on it or whatever, I'm like, dude, we'll do, not only will we do a story on it, we'll do the story on it. So what we did was, the goal was run the motor, run the stock motor with we had done a few modifications, air intake and exhaust and a few things. And then run it on the chassis dyno, take the motor out of the chassis dyno, put it up on the engine dyno, run that motor on the engine dyno, make a few modifications while they're on the engine dyno, do a block swap, short block swap, put the other stuff, the stock heads and the camshaft that we had in there, all that stuff on the new short block to see if it makes any more power. Then put ported heads and stuff on there, and then different cams, and put those on there, and then take that out and take that off of the engine dyno, put it back in the car and run it on the chassis dyno. And all of that stuff happened, which was awesome. So we have numbers going from that was the first time I think that I did direct, and we did chassis dyno, engine dyno, chassis dyno. So we have direct numbers going from one to the other, and people always want to know if it's a percentage, and it is some kind of percentage, and that's what I wanted to talk about tonight, is that it's not a strict percentage, because a number of things can change. One of the big things that changes is how you run it on the engine dyno versus how you run it on the chassis dyno, because a lot of people think that, okay, you take it out and run the motor exactly the way that it was on the engine dyno and the chassis dyno, and that the only difference is the drivetrain. That's nowhere near accurate. Several things. One, whenever we run something on the engine dyno, we normally run it with no accessories. When we run it in the car, it has all the accessories on. We also normally run it with headers and some kind of exhaust on the chassis dyno, but that setup, even if we were to run the same headers, which we can, we run a different exhaust. Like on the car, I think we had a MagnaFlow exhaust on it. So we had headers and a MagnaFlow and exhaust all the way out, tailpipes and everything. Well, we didn't run that exact exhaust on the car. I mean, on the engine dyno. Also air intakes, in the car, even if you have some kind of aftermarket air intake that's not the factory, filter box and all that, you have some kind of aftermarket one. We don't normally run that. Usually we just run an open throttle body, or sometimes with a radius entry on it. We can run the air intake, which I think we did on this one. We run a different tune because when we ran on the engine dyno, I think we ran this one with a fast XFI management system and not the factory one. We ran the factory one in the car. Again, you can tune it with the factory one and spend a lot of time doing that, but it's not usually as well dialed in as it is on the engine dyno. We run it colder on the engine dyno than we run it on the chassis dyno. There are a lot of differences that have nothing to do yet. No, remember, I have not even mentioned drivetrain yet. So there's a lot of differences that will change the power going from the engine dyno to the chassis dyno just because the configuration is different. The other thing that happens on the chassis dyno is the percentage difference that you get that everybody wants, 15%, 20%. Usually they want more if they don't make a lot of power on the chassis dyno. Oh, it's 20, 25%. You wish. It's not anywhere near that much. The difference also is in what drivetrain you have. So if you have a 5-speed transmission that's a T5, let's say, or a T45, whatever it is, whatever transmission you have is going to have a certain amount of drivetrain loss, not a percentage, a certain amount. the flywheel that you have, the clutch that you have, all that stuff is going to have its kind of fixed amount. It will change a little bit frictionally with the kind of power that you're applying to it, but for the most part, it has a fixed amount. The drive shaft that you have, the length, the modulus of steel, the diameter, the material that you have, all that is going to affect it. The rear end that you have, whether it's old and tired and worn out, is it a 9-inch? Is it an 8.8? What is it? A 7.5? What is it? Those are going to change things. The axles that you have, the wheel and tire, the diameter, the gearing that you use, what transmission gear you put it in, all of these things are going to affect what your percentage is of drivetrain losses going from an engine dyno to a chassis dyno, irrespective of the changes that we covered earlier that are differences that you get from just the engine difference. So there's no fixed amount. I know everybody wants to make it easy, and it's 0.2 and 2 miles an hour, or it's 11.4%, or it's 21.2, or whatever the number is. It's not. It varies. It varies by a lot. So you can have, like I said, the example that I use are trophy trucks. You have, I don't know, 35-inch tall tires that weigh 300 pounds a piece, whatever the number is. You have big 9-inch rear ends and 35 spined axles and turbo 400 transmissions, or whatever their thing is. Those things can lose a tremendous amount because all of that drivetrain weight it takes a lot to drive it. Whereas a little front wheel drive Honda has very, very little loss, even as a percentage has very, very little loss, because those things are small and don't require a lot of power to drive them. So in the chassis dyno, engine dyno thing, it's not a fixed amount. It's each thing has its own amount. There's a little bit of change for friction. And so there's no way for you to say this thing, unless you tested it directly back to back with that engine in that configuration, and then put it in the car and said, hey, it was this in this configuration, and it made this much on the engine dyno, and this on this chassis dyno. When we tested it, it did this. And then you can back calculate your percentage if you want, but you can't carry that over universally to everything because it's not the same. But we did do that on the Mustang, which was very, very fun. It was, as you might imagine, very, very involved, because running lots of chassis dyno stuff, pulling the engine out, running it on the engine dyno, swapping over all these parts onto a new motor, putting that on, running it on the engine dyno, doing all the changes on the new configuration, and then taking that when it was done and putting it back. You know, it was a lot, but it was really, you know, now that it's all done, we could talk about it, and it was super cool. Let's see how our poll is doing. Are the anti-pistons in the 2.2 liter Dodge strong enough to take 20 psi? We got a lot of people that are saying yes, it's definitely that strong. Is it true or a myth? 20% loss. We just covered that. It is a myth. What's your opinion on WCP treatment on the bottom end? I don't know that I've ever tried it. Let's see. I think we. What head gasket are you using on the 2.2 Turbo 1? A Felpro, I think, is what we have on there. New York for the 2.5 EFI scroll type. I planned it and ported it. Planed it maybe. Surfaced it, I'm thinking, along with chamber work. It was a dog, so I did another one, ported, but no chamber work. Performance was back plus. So you think doing the chamber work hurt it? Chamber work normally, if you unshroud the valve, is usually good for it. A Truck Norris cam on an LQ9 with 243 or 823 heads will make more power than a 243 head, and then a Vortec on top of that is good. Direct comparison between an unlocked automatic and a manual trans back to back. I think we have that. I think the guys from Kenny Bell have that. They ran automatic and manual Coyote Mustangs, I think, on the dyno, and they also ran tests with different rear end gears, I think, in the manual, if I remember right, and it does change the power. And auto trans power is the percentage number for automatic transmissions are not universal either, because the different automatic transmissions take a different amount of power. How much did you get from the fresh block? Actually, very, very little. Doing our short block swap from a tired motor that had, I don't know, let's say 150 or 200,000 miles, whatever the amount was, that I thought was very tired, judging by how the rear end sounded. But I was hoping that we were going to pick up a bunch, but it was hardly any at all, and I was very disappointed. Mexico's in the house. Garrett Turbo's website mentions some formulas such as airflow, horsepower times airflow times brake specific divided by 60. The required manifold pressure. That seems like really complicated. But how are you going to determine the brake specific fuel consumption unless you test something? How are you going to get that number? Are you just going to make it up? And if you don't test something, how are you going to get airflow and a gas constant and an inlet temperature and VE times RPM? How are you going to get that? If you want to size your turbo, the easiest way to do it is not use that formula. The easiest way to do it is decide how much power you want to make, and then get a turbo that will make that much power. If you want 1,000 horsepower, you pick 1,000 horsepower turbo. That's already scienced out for you. It's really, really easy. I know people like to be on the internet and use formulas and stuff, but the the power boost formula is really, really simple. If you know your NA power, then and you know how much power you want to make boosted, I can tell you how much boost that's going to be required. I'm building a Gen 4 6-liter, swap into a Crown Vic. Very cool, 4,200 pounds. Would you run cathedral heads for the low-end torque to get that moving, or square port heads for top end? Are you running it boosted, or is it going to be NA? Your combination will make more power if you run, if you're limiting yourself to factory heads. So if I'm choosing between, on a 6-liter, if I'm choosing between a factory cathedral head or a factory rec port head, I would take our factory rec port head on a 6-liter. It's going to lose a little bit of power down low, but it's going to make so much more power on the big end, especially if you put a camshaft in it. Thoughts on deep thoughts. You cannot ask a question with the word thoughts in it. So you got to rephrase the question. I think I destroyed the swirl and tumble in the ported head I did at the chamber work. Engineering the chambers must have been good. That's quite possible. You can ruin a chamber design. I'd like to see what Calvin's 867 rear wheel horsepower on the 4200 would be on an engine dyno. Rear mount eBay special on a crew cab is 2.5-inch charge pipe big enough for 650. Yes, that's fine. Especially if it's a rear mount. You're going to want it to be small. It's going to be more responsive that way. What if I want to make 1,000 horsepower as efficiently as possible? By that, do you mean at the lowest boost level? If you want to do it at the lowest boost level, then picking your turbo is not what you should be concerned with. You should make your NA power even greater. That way you'll make it at the lowest possible boost level. And honestly, I think the difference between if you have a 500 horsepower NA motor and you want to make 1,000 horsepower, it should take you 1 bar of boost. If you are really far off in doing that because you picked the wrong turbo, I don't think you're going to be, judging by the fact that we've done it a lot with an S475, an S480, a VS Racing 7875. If you pick a really super high dollar turbo, will you be able to do that at less than 1 bar? Maybe. But if you are able to do that, it's not going to be by much. The only way to do that is if you have a really, really low charge temperature. Am I going to be disappointed with my BTR NSR truck cam on a cheap Turbo 5.3? No. And if you installed good springs, you really don't need springs with an NSR cam. And the other thing is, I'm surprised more people haven't gravitated toward an NSR truck Norris cam, because it makes within a couple of horsepower of the higher lift truck Norris cam. So don't tell anybody I said that. Garrett wants engine size and horsepower for their calculations. Yeah. So if you don't know your NA power, how are you going to plug that stuff in? I have a set of Dart 360 big block heads on a 508, still building it, and was told heads are too big for my cubic inch. You can't use the word thoughts, but no, they're not too big. Is Andrew Nelson Calvin's dad? How much would you say two turbos that are rated at 705 horsepower? So is each turbo rated at 705? That's really that's oddly specific. Is it 750 maybe and not 705? Michigan muscle. You're gonna have to get rid of the word thoughts. Ever tested two inline liquid intercoolers in series? I want to. I want to do a twintercooled deal just so I can say the phrase twintercooled. Timer, none of the factory Dodge motors had forged pistons in them. You guys got to stop using the word thoughts. Borg Matchbot thing is really pretty good as long as you have all the information. It's all good. I have to draw the line though. Everybody has their thing. Mine are open-ended essay questions, and that's what the word thoughts do. Ask a question that I can answer specifically and not have to go into some tirade about something. We're losing some of our yeses. We're down to 70% and 30% saying no. Are the NA Pistons and the Dodge strong enough? So I wonder if it would have changed if I would have used the Nissan one. Brian, you need to take a look at I have some Whipple stuff up on I don't think I did. Oh, I did a 671 on a 383. So Andrew is Calvin's dad. What's up, man? Yeah, Andrew, I'm thinking that Calvin's 867 is probably 4-digit on the engine dyno. Can you talk about +4 cam and what it does to power and torque? I understand the cam is timed at +4, but already what does it do to torque and horsepower? You don't know what it does. It may do nothing. That's the thing. You don't know unless you test it. Because here, I go through this all the time with people. Well, all you got to do is advance the cam and you'll make more low-speed power. Will you? What if the cam already has 4 degrees of advance built in? And now you have 8 degrees of advance, and now there's too much. Because you can advance a cam too far or retard the cam too far and make it not efficient anymore, where it just loses power everywhere. So you don't know really what it does because it depends on what you're starting out with and what the motor you're starting out with and how well those two things get along. Again, like everything else, that's not universal. Advancing a cam doesn't always make more low speed power. Sometimes advancing the cam doesn't do anything. I'll give you an example. The LS9 camshaft. I thought, oh, I'm going to advance this cam. I'm going to look like a hero. I'm going to bring back all of that mid-range, that low speed and mid-range power that they always lose whenever you test them. And it didn't do that at all. And of any of the combinations, you would think that one would respond, but it didn't do that. 706 versus 821 on a Camel in the LQ4. There's no comparison between those two. Unless you're concerned with torque at 2,500 RPM, an 821 versus a 706. And lucky for you, that video is already up. I've already compared the LS3 head versus a 706 on a 6-liter with a cam in it. and you can see for yourself that video's up. It makes a lot more power with that rec port head. Will a 6-liter spool faster than a 4.8 with the same turbo? Yes. Very, very much so, because it makes a lot more low-speed power. In fact, it makes so much more low-speed power that more than likely, depending on what size turbo you eventually put on there, that it's going to limit the power production of the turbo, because you'll get to the flow rate of the hot side on a 6-liter way before you will on a 4.8. Let's go beverage. This is a good question. Did you test the effect of retarding the LS9 cam? I did not. We never retarded it. The poll question doesn't specify for how long or with what safety margin. I can't really be that specific on a simple poll question. David doesn't really say anything at the end of what he puts up. Are you talking about Vizard? David Vizard is awesome. He's a treasure in this industry. He gets a little out there sometimes, which is awesome. And I need to have a discussion with him, but I love his stuff and I watch it all the time. How much would you say 2 turbos are already at 705 horsepower truly capable of making? Did you ask that question already? So they would be capable, if you have 2 of them, each of them making 705, they'd be capable of 1,410 horsepower. He does talking specific to 350 Chevys, but yeah, Big Bang 454. We tried that, but I haven't revisited it. Casey, he obviously is not tremendously healthy. He's not healthy, but he's been that way his whole life. I mean, I remember David from way back, even before any of this stuff happened, that he's always been kind of out there, which is cool, which is the kind of people that we want. Aaron, the thing that you need to think about on twins versus singles is that a lot of times if you run a single turbo, you can't get everything out of it, because unless the motor is small, because like I said, sometimes you run into the maximum flow rate of the hot side before the cold side. When you use them as twins, that becomes less of an issue. Then you can get all of the compressor side, because you don't get to the limit, the flow limit of the hot side, which is why in twins, a lot of times you can make more power than you can with one as a single, especially if you're using a bigger motor. So we keep going down in our poll here. We're down to 67%. The NA pistons are fine. Think about what an NA LS piston does. Hugh, he comes up with all kinds of crazy stuff, which is awesome. Like I said, we need that in the industry. David probably still does port heads, although he has guys that he's taught to do it also. I don't know how much of that he can still do. I don't know that he can, it just becomes physically limiting when you get to that age and that ability. I'm using them as twins on direct injected 5.3. Is it a L83 or something? And what do you have that are, what kind of turbo that you have that's specific at 705 horsepower? Turbo stock bottom end 396 versus stock bottom end 454. The bigger motor makes more NA power. So if you have enough turbo, then the bigger motor makes more power. If you have a 2013 Camaro, what carb legal blower would you put on? I don't know about carb legal stuff, so I'm the wrong guy to ask. I don't know. Are there any of them out there? At least he doesn't put slant sixes in a Miata. Wow, shots fired. That's okay. We get fire shots every once in a while. Larry, you always need an intercooler, but it will take 800 horsepower minus 560, 240 divided by 560, 1 point plus 1 equals times 14.7. It will take, no, well, it's not going to take anywhere near that much. It's only going to take about 7 pounds, right? Yeah, something like that. 240, a little bit less than that. 800 minus 560, 240. Yeah, less than 7 pounds, 6.3. And you can run 6.3 without an intercooler, but you should run something, E85 or something. Wow, Casey, you're on a roll tonight. They're the Precision 6262 SP turbos. Okay. And do they max out at 705 horsepower? Like, I've never seen a map, and I've read a lot of compressor maps. I've never seen a compressor map. Does it just say at the bottom that it's 705, 705 horsepower, or 70.5? It'd be 70.05 though, in flow rate. Goes to 11. Do you work out every day? No, I don't. I don't work out nearly enough anymore. I need to. I like to run, but I need to work out more. I had been doing a lot of that when I was doing American Ninja Warrior and stuff, and I haven't since COVID kind of took the wind out of my sails. I need to get back on it. Where can I find your boost versus horsepower formula? It's in a lot of the videos. Yeah, the thing to remember is that every 14.7 pounds of boost will increase the power output by 100%. And every percentage of that, if it's 10 pounds, then that's like 0.69 or so increase. So I was watching the video. Was that a 2.3 or 2. We had a 2.9 Whipple on that. Capable of 705 horsepower going in a light feet. Yeah, if you have twins on that, that'd be fine. ProCharger, Vortec, Edelbrock, Whipple. Make a few carb legal blowers for that. Cool. Well, if you're looking for answers, I don't know about the carb legal part of it because I don't get involved in that. But if you're looking for the power part of that, you can look at positive displacement blowers versus root style blowers or twin screw blowers, very similar in terms of their approach to the boost curve and power output. You can look at the videos that I have up where we compare those because I've compared those directly. Tom, Project's wife's Commodore high feature V6. A silly Aussies put the motor in north-south. Several hours to get the thermostat that's leaking back to it. Good. That's good that you're working on stuff. Isn't it the wrist pin size combined with the piston material used to determine what it should handle for boost? Not material, because if you take a look at an LS motor, you wouldn't select that material for boosted application, especially if you were telling somebody, hey, you know what I want to do? I think I want to run like 30 pounds of boost, and I want to run 30 pounds of boost on a motor that already makes like more than 500 horsepower NA, and it has a stock wrist pin. You wouldn't pick any of those stock things for that application. And yet that motor is made, I don't know, 200 runs over 1,000 horsepower, and then made a couple of runs that are, well, actually several runs that are in the 12, 13, 14, and then ultimately 1,500 horsepower. You would never pick a stock LS 6-liter piston or piston pin for a 1,500 horsepower combination, and yet it still works. Peru's in the house. Excellent. They have Peru. They have anacondas down there, right? Am I right in that? I think I am. That's South America. I want to see a comparison between a Magnum 318 and a 5.9 liter. You and me both. And I have a 360 Magnum, a 5.9 liter, and I want to get a 5.2 liter Magnum just so that I can show people, some people in particular, that a 318 does not make the power that a 360 does. That a bigger motor will make more power than the smaller motor, certainly more average power every time. Can you suggest a responsive motor to make 300 wheel horsepower on a 3.5 liter? That should be really, really easy. I'm sure that the NA pistons are cast. On a 2007 C6 Z06. So that's 07. It's going to take. Do you think it's worth the time and money to swap out the ported heads to a set of aftermarket CID heads with a matching custom cam grind? I'm trying to make 700 wheel horsepower NA. So is the 07 C6 Z06, is that an LS7 motor then? 700 wheel horsepower NA is a lot. And what you need, if you're trying to do that with a stock bottom end, I don't think you can put enough camshaft in it, even with really good cylinder heads, to make the power that you're talking about. Have you tested different types of intercooler inlets and outlets? And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I designed some that work much better. Straight through, barrel, same side, offset. I've not done direct airflow testing on that, which is what you probably would do. Aren't the Magnum motors ones that crack heads commonly? I don't know that that's the case or not. My concern isn't that. My concern is that there are people that think that, and there are Chevy guys that are like this too. They think that the like for instance the DZ302, oh, it likes to rev. It makes way more power than a 327 or a 350. No, it doesn't. In fact, it made the same power as those at the peak, and then just like lost out everywhere else in the power curve. And the exact same thing happens with a 360 and a 318. Even if you restricted them somehow enough that at the peak, a 318 and a 360 made the same power, peak power, the average power for a 360 over a 318 would be so much better. A turbo motor for a 3.5 liter, I would use a single 3076 probably. And if you're only wanting to make 300 wheel horsepower, it could even be smaller than that. Is a 440 stroker fully forged? It can be both. It doesn't have to be. You can use cast crank if they made a cast crank as a stroker. It can use cast pistons. They probably wouldn't do cast rods unless they did a stroker using some other kind of like manufacturer's rod. Like they used the like a Ford rod maybe might be the right length. Or a 400M or something like that. But a lot of times they are, but they don't have to be. I'll take a double chili bomb. Yeah. I think 2 of those intercoolers with 2 cheap turbos would be like the cat's meow. Jimmy, okay, it is an L7, 700 NA wheel horsepower. would be a lot. 700 flywheel horsepower. Even that out of a 7-liter is 100 horsepower per liter. That's quite a bit. Oh, James, so you have a, am I right? Oh, so it's not a 427, it's a 440 stroker. Okay, maybe I see. That's what happens when I go off on a tangent. Is there anything new and Mopar strong and reliable enough to swap into a first-gen Neon? Yeah, the motor that's in there already, or an SRT4. Bob, a 360 is going to have over 40 foot-pounds. Yeah, maybe even more than that. I've not tested the GM 60-degree V6s. I've tested a 3100 or a 3400 in a Grand Am on the chassis dyno with a turbo on it, but not on the engine dyno. The Casey, the Chili Bomb is brand new. That just happened like this year. Got boost. You need to get rid of the word thoughts on your question. Okay, there we go. Does it work? Or Pixie does. A heat shield under a plastic intake manifold is going to do nothing. What is your fitness regimen? Nothing right now. I do run on occasion when I decide to get motivated. Before that, it was a lot. Brandon, you want me to test the CHI RAM? I haven't heard of that. Oh, the cat's meow. Okay, would that be like bee's knees? That's Jack Black. The cat's pajamas, the bee's knees, all of those things. Bee's knees, yeah. 64% are saying yes, and 36% are saying no. I want them to be, because I want the higher compression to be like suitable for the boosting, but Richard offers his knowledge and opinion on every question. There's no reason to add the word thoughts. The thing with thoughts, for me, the triggering mechanism for the word thoughts is that people go into this like wild discussion about things and then go thoughts. Like I'm supposed to go off for half an hour on discussing something that they said. It's much, much better and easier for me because I get a lot of emails and a lot of direct messages and questions and all kinds of stuff. It's much easier if somebody says, hey, will a 5.3 with an S475 work? Or instead of 5.3 S475, thoughts. My thoughts are that you should have asked your question correctly. The duck's nuts? I've never heard that. Cat's pajamas I have, though. What fuel are you planning to run on 20 PSI? Whatever is required. Here is the discussion that I would have about insulating a plastic or composite intake manifold. Here's what people need to understand. I need to do the cool video that I want to do on this, which is going to require 4 blow torches, which right off the bat, you should be saying, oh yeah, Richard, I'm in. This myth about heating the air up. If you take a composite intake manifold, actually, if you take an aluminum intake manifold or a steel one or an aluminum inlet, air inlet, or a steel one or whatever, a plastic one, whatever it is, in anything that you flow airflow through, there's a boundary layer. So there's this like little thin layer, like let's say that much. And that's the surface area that's, well, the air area that's right adjacent to whatever the material is. So all the air is flowing past this, and then in that boundary layer, there's very little flow. So if there was heat on the exterior of whatever this is, if it's steel or plastic or whatever it is, the heat would be given to the thing that's adjacent to it, which is that boundary layer. The boundary layer is not flowing, so it's also not adding heat to that flowing air. And the faster that flowing air is and the greater the volume is, the less heat you add to it. So while you're at idle, when you're flowing very little, there could be more heat transfer. While you're at wide open throttle, especially at RPM, all the air is flowing very, very fast. It's not going to change the temperature of the air externally. So, and then conversely, if you have a heat shield that's stopping radiant heat from the aluminum valley cover, let's say on an LS motor, whether the motor is aluminum or steel, you're stopping radiant heat from coming up into the composite manifold. The problem with that is that you're not stopping the radiant heat, because if the hood's closed and the engine compartment, everywhere you measure in the engine compartment, you're going to get variations in temperature in different spots, especially as you're driving when airflow is going through that. But if you're sitting there like at a stoplight, everything in the engine compartment is really, really hot. The heat shield is not going to stop the hotness that's on the top of the manifold and everywhere around the manifold. Everything in there is hot. And so you can't stop heat from going up into the manifold. And even if you did, the transfer rate from the manifold into the air intake, into the air going into the motor, is very minimal. The best thing that you can do is not try to put fancy shielding or covers or whatever. Make sure that the air that's going into the motor is cold. A cold air source for the motor is the single biggest thing you can do. Kevin, what's going on? I'd love to see some testing on the crossfire injection. Me too. That would be awesome. A friend of mine, daily driver Grand Prix, Turbo 3.1 Grand Prix. Those are really cool and kind of rare too now. On your Gen 5 454 videos, there's never a peanut port intake used. I have used peanut port dual plane intake manifolds on a peanut port head before. The problem is we normally don't have a peanut port intake manifold because, I mean, nobody wants to use that. But we will be doing that later on. Headsets for an LS, I always put good ones on. I don't use offshore ones. I have tried on small block Chevys and small block Fords offshore ARP-esque knockoffs, and they're terrible. The first time putting them in, they stretched, and I took them out and threw them away. And I've done that several times now and not had good luck with them, so I don't use those. The head studs, if I'm going to put head studs in something, I put good ones in it. Michael, I don't know what your deal is, but I know what it is now. I've used heat guns that are safer. I know, but it's not as nearly as good and as exciting of a video. You want to point a heat gun into the throttle body? There's no, I don't think there's any question about changing the heat. If you change the temperature of the air going in, like if you, for instance, put your air intake system like right next to the header and it gets hotter, it's going to make less power. But what I want to do is have 4 torches going to a steel intake tube and show you that, well, find out if that really does anything. What about the twin turbo 3-liter Inline 6-cylinder. I don't think anybody's ever run that yet, right? I did use a heat gun recently in one of the videos just to test the thermostat, and that worked out really good. Do oval intakes hurt power on a Gen 5 peanut port head? The intake manifold itself, the fact that it's an oval port or that it is a peanut port, doesn't necessarily hurt the power. The design of the intake manifold is different on the oval port intakes than it is on the rectangular port intake manifolds. The Burley and Freiberger did a big test on that, and after they ported the oval port intake manifold, they got it to make as much as the rectangular port intake manifold does. Engine Master tested heating the intake. Yeah, an air intake, putting temperature in it does almost nothing. Have you ever played with a hot vapor idea? No. If you notice on the hot vapor engine where it made more power, it was also turbocharged. And I'm not certain about hot vapor stuff. Like I said, if you look at what the air that's going in, how much of that is coming in contact with whatever is hot, and then not just that, but the time that it takes for heat transfer to occur and how quickly that air goes by and is not heated, you'll kind of get an idea. We have 2 more minutes because it's Saturday night. Yeah, I know Smoky Unix deal. I'm familiar. Richard, have you wrapped individual runners on an intake manifold? Do you mean like do a heat insulation wrap or something like that? Were we not? Did we not cover that already? I think we did. One more minute. Somebody ask a question. You get the last question of the night. Alan, yeah. It wasn't called a turbo. It was called a mixer or an atomizer or something, a moisturizer or something. But that's what it was. A mixer, yeah. I'm using the turbo to mix stuff. We're using it to mix power. Yes, I'm just wondering why port mismatch doesn't matter much. It matters much less than you think. If the head can only flow a certain amount, the intake manifold being mismatched doesn't change that flow rate that much. A hot vapor homogenizer. There you go. Morning session, yeah, maybe a little later. We'll sleep in a little bit. It's the weekend. I may stay up late tonight working all the way till like 9 o'clock or 9:30. Yeah, he did. It was a homogenizer, atomizer, something like that. So, Barry, I'm glad you're there in the mornings. Casey, I saw the engine. I don't want to do a big bore version for that Trail 90. I want to do forced induction. Do some nutritional schooling. I'm not the guy you want to talk to about nutrition. Even when I was doing American Ninja Warrior, the nutrition part of it wasn't big. I mean, it should be, but it really wasn't. I figured I was working out hard enough and doing enough stuff that I could kind of eat what I wanted. Life is short. So we're going to close down our poll at 65%. 35% saying no. Are the NA pistons in the 2.2-liter Dodge strong enough to take 20 pounds of boost? So most people saying 2/3 saying yes. Yep, seafood diet. Every time I go down to Southern California, when I get back, one of my favorite things is we go out to our favorite restaurant. You find a smog pump. That, Casey, that's really the idea. Is I want to get one of the electric smog pumps, probably off a modular motor or something, and try that. That should flow enough for the 5 horsepower or whatever that thing works. I just need to figure a way to get the fuel enrichment that I need. So I just got to work on that a little bit. I wonder if the smog pump could use a draw through carburetor. That would be kind of cool, huh? SH2 Taurus powertrain 400. Yeah, that is a good deal. The motors are good. I don't think the electric smog pumps though are going to be sealed very well though. I don't know if they're going to like having fuel going through them. And I'm wondering how much I wonder what kind of jets and stuff would be available for them. I was trying to, the last time I was driving it, I was trying to work all that stuff out in my head. I wonder what I can do there. put a CSU Trail 90 carburetor on it. Because I know for 5 horsepower, that's not really very much airflow. Use a Kohler downdraft 25 horsepower carb on top of the smog pump. Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Probably we don't need to go to a 25 horsepower one. Dean, you're always on the winning pitching team. And on that note, it's time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will be back tomorrow, and we'll have another video. We're talking about tomorrow. I think the video the big video, not the live feed stuff, is about boost response. We're going to talk about things that I've done to really destroy boost response because it's really easy to do. Thank you guys all. Have a good Saturday night. I will see you all tomorrow.